everyone. Welcome to another episode of ACTO. So today the topic will be OutSystems, in particular the OutSystems dev community. So we invited two people, Miguel and Melo, which still maintains the relationship with this community, but he was also previously already a manager in OutSystems. And we have Miguel Baltazar, which is the current lead of this community. Welcome you both to this
Thank you.
episode.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
I think a good starting point would be for everyone that is listening to us, giving an introduction about yourselves. I don't know who wants to start. Maybe Melo. And now I'm going to
Okay.
call you Melo and Baltazar. So
All right. Okay. So I'll start.
Name
So
flashing
basically,
resolution.
I'm by heart a software engineer. I have all my life, which is quite long, as you can tell by the white beard. Indeed, I was a very high code programmer for many years, and I had the opportunity in 2001 to join this small startup made up of a few good people called OutSystems. I stayed with OutSystems in total for 15 years, the 9 of which actually working in the platform. And then community manager, which was actually an activity that fills me still to this day of great pride. And finally, my last, let's put it, occupation within OutSystems was in the training group, not only creating curriculum for, some of you might have studied using my curriculum. I apologize for any shortcomings of that, but also, in classroom engagements, which I always found very, very, very exciting. And I think I taught OutSystems in 12 different countries. So that's quite a cool story. For 6 years, I'm now in the Netherlands. I moved to the Netherlands. And 5 years ago, I co-founded an OutSystems partner over here in the Netherlands, which is Product League. And yeah, we're going good, and we're still very excited with the work that OutSystems does, and we do with OutSystems.
cool. And now you, Baltazar.
Okay. Me, well, I'm also a computer science by training, but effectively, I don't think I ever was a great developer. Effectively, I've always kind of skirted around. And really the things that I've always interested is solving the problems and not so much doing the development itself. I guess that's one of the reasons why I actually joined Paulo Rosado's first startup in 1998 because the promise was to be able to solve problems with coding less, which was something that appealed to me. Well, fast forward a few years, I actually joined OutSystems in 2003. I effectively am going to turn 20 OutSystems years this year, so 2023. And I've done basically a little bit of everything. I've actually run marketing for a little bit. I did partnerships back before 2006. And then in 2006, I moved to the US and I kind of brought up OutSystems, everything that had to do pre-sales, professional services, so everything that was technical. And I was there in the US, in the Bay Area for 8 years. So I moved back in 2015. And so we went from customer one, which was our first customer that we got there in 2006, to about 60 to 70 customers in 2015, which was a really, really big journey and a lot of doors closed in our faces and a lot of what the hell is the Portuguese company doing selling software in the Bay Area that makes no sense whatsoever. What are you guys doing here? To having flagship customers like Safeway, Charles River, and other big customers, which then allowed us to really start our presence in the US in 2015. I've moved back 2015. I did professional services for a while, experts. Then I did customer success. I helped launch the customer success practice. And over the years, I've moved from place to place. My most recent, before what I do now, and I'll tell you exactly what I do now, but before what I do now was running OutSystems support. So I ran OutSystems support for about 3.5 years. which was definitely a very challenging yet very rewarding post. And in May of last year, Gonçalo Deolas and Paulo invited me to run the community, to run the OutSystems developer relations team, which we then decided that the title VP of developers would make a lot more sense, because those are the people that actually use our product 8 hours a day, and to whom we should be catering for. And so I was very happy to take on this post, and we're still going through it. We have a great team, and we have a great community. So I'm really keen to be here and talking about it.
So one thing that so I was planning on asking one thing, but then after what you just said, Baltazar, I think definitely begs the question that is, what I think it's very unique about OutSystems, I would say, is that usually a SaaS company is pretty much just focusing on selling the product, right? And so it's all about selling the product, sales, and and definitely taking off. But for OutSystems in particular, it's super interesting because not only you need to sell the platform, the product, but you also need to create a community of people that are going to use it, right? And I think that the OutSystems story that I'm pretty sure that we need to talk about that as well, is fascinating in that sense, right? It's almost like you try to solve two problems at once. That is, I'm bringing a super interesting platform that is going to solve tons of problems, but I need people to make the implementations, like the consultants, the OutSystems professionals of this community. And you need to grow that community as well at the same time. As you definitely kind of, breaking through the market. Like, in your opinion, and I know this obviously is very subjective, what do you think it's harder? Was it kind of to convince companies to adopt OutSystems, or was it actually to go to professionals and say, look, this is the technology of the future, learn this because you're going to be successful?
I think it's effectively both, right? It's very hard. It's something that needs to be done at the same time. You need to push both levers at the same time, or else it doesn't go up, right? If you push one or push the other, it doesn't work. But the truth is, a lot of the sales that OutSystems does is done at the level of the CTO. It's done at the level of the business and the IT decision makers, because those are the people that need to understand what is the use case they're going to use OutSystems for, right? So I can sell OutSystems to a company, and then they look at it and say, what does it do? And we say nothing, right? Unless you build something with it, it does nothing, right? But then effectively, if those people are very excited, have an amazing use case, but then they have no one to put it in and to implement it, then it basically, again, there's no value to it, right? And that is why this notion of a community of training, the speed of training, the level of content, the community that supports the newbies that come in, because a lot of times our customers say, okay, I have 4 developers here that are doing something else. I'm going to move them to OutSystems to build this app. And can you build an app effectively with 4 people that are just learning the technology fast enough? It's hard, right? And I guess this is where Miguel Melo comes in, because our partner community is vital in these steps, right? Your first app, unless you have experienced OutSystems people, should have the presence of a partner that has those experienced OutSystems people that can only quickly bring the value that the CTO and the IT decision maker is looking for, but at the same time can coach your internal developers, can help them and show them, and in a way kind of evangelize them a little bit to see how not only this is a great thing for the company, but it's also a great thing for them, because they can deliver value faster, they're able to get ahead in their career a lot faster, and they're able to add to their skills portfolio something that is coming up in the market. Miguel, I'd like you to comment, I think, because this is highly relevant.
Yeah, no, I agree. Both things need to come up at the same time, because they feed back as you described. And one of on the side of the people and the capabilities, not of the platform. Normally the clients are just not ready to themselves fend for themselves and leverage all the goodness that even the best platform might have. And then where do you effectively locate these people, and what is the path for the individual client between starting up and dot on the horizon where they might be more independent. And indeed, I think this is where some help beyond the technology, as much as a technology-driven company as OutSystems has, some help on the human side, on the human resources side is needed. And I observed throughout the years, obviously, the investment that OutSystems noticed that it needed to make, not just on individuals that need to learn, but also indeed on the partner ecosystem, so that they would have people stalwarts, someone that extends beyond the initial handshake of OutSystems of selling the platform into the actual process of making the platform come alive on the context of that particular client. And this obviously involves the raw OutSystems developers, consultants, and where do you get the knowledge? And probably we're going to talk a little bit more about how the community does it. But actually, what I have found over the last few years is you also need the help to bridge sometimes the lack of maturity that the individual clients have on figuring out what it is that they actually need. So I'm beyond the hardcore community of OutSystems developers that know the features and respect the architecture and all of that. You need to build also an outer layer of practice of people who can translate the wishes of the client into something that is manageable and then to be instantiated in code. So there's, even when you look at just people and staffing, there's several layers that you also need to get going at the same time to realize the value of the platform.
Okay. Before we go into detail about the community and the work that the community is doing, I need to ask, just for us to situate a bit in time, when was the community created? Because OutSystems already has a big story, so already more than 20 years. I wonder what was the main drive at the time to create a community, and how has been the evolution since then for the community.
Miguel, do you want to go first?
Well, I'm trying
more
to
of the archaeology part of me.
Yeah, it is very. Yeah, now you put me kind of on the spot. I would probably place the community actually started with Paulo Tavares, the community management. He was the first, and he's in the team of Miguel Baltazar, a great guy, a person with lots of smarts and lots of heart for the developers. Basically, when he moved on to other challenges, I filled in his very, very big shoes to fill in. So I think probably the formal community would have come alive at 10, or at least with a dedicated person to 10, with a dedicated person seeing to it. Obviously, community has been there since the beginning. Since the beginning that OutSystems has had people in the clients which were not part of the company and were the broader community need.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that those first customers were people that actually learned and that we talked to, and then they eventually talked to other people, and they, a little bit like Malcolm Gladwell's tipping point, right? It just started slowly, and we still have people from that time. I remember our second customer in the US. I just got a call from the person that was there saying, hey, I have this great, because we're launching this digital volunteers thing this year, and it's going to be really important to contribute to community. We can talk a little bit about it later. But he just called me and said, hey, I have this perfect nonprofit. I'm not working with OutSystems anymore in my current job, but I would really like to work with OutSystems at this nonprofit. It would be great. So these people, these people that started, they're still there. They're still going. But I would say Miguel is right, in which 2010 was the first time that we said, there's a whole community out there. We need to enable them. We need to be able to create these capabilities so that we help them grow and learn and evolve. the truth is that I don't think we actually thought of it as community, right? We just wanted to support these people. We wanted to give them the tools that they needed to talk to each other, etc. And then all of a sudden, it just started going. I think effectively the community created itself, and with our support, they just started building on each other. And the truth is that, you know, people come in, they ask questions, they are helped by, you know, these amazing MVPs and champions that we have answering all these questions, and then they themselves want to give back, and they want to be part of the community. They want to teach other people as they come in and influence. So effectively, you know, I wouldn't say our job is easy, but our job is just to remove roadblocks and let the community kind of fuel itself for all intents and purposes.
So to your point, would you say that, you know, the community by itself, it's kind of almost like a self-ran community? So it's people that had the same sort of interest got together. You pretty much act as some sort of glue, of giving some sort of, you know, of tool enablement, just like you said very well, like just saying, look, you all have the same sort of challenges, problems. You're all kind of learning things that you can share, and definitely kind of, you know, even make the community more interesting. That kind of reminds me a little bit of you know, the Stack Overflow of this life, right? That is, you know, a place where you know that if you're into this sort of technology, you know that you're going to have some support, maybe for some random person. And that kind of is what makes the community interesting.
No, absolutely. You're completely right, Pedro. The only issue that we've had, and we had this all along, and we've disrupted a lot of things, right? We invented cloud before it was even cloud. The name OutSystems comes from the fact that we wanted applications that would run outside of your data center somewhere, right? That's why it's called OutSystems. So effectively, you know, Paulo invented cloud in 2003, and cloud only came up, you know, 2008, 2009 as a concept itself. But our logic has always been that the problem is, because our product is visual, right? Our product, it really effectively does not give itself to be supported by Stack Overflow, which has all these amazing tools to merge code, to get snippets, to do copy paste. So we had to create our own tools using actually our own product. So all our community, our forums, our forge, our jobs, all of that is created with OutSystems. So we had to create our own product and our own community tools that would adapt to the type of product that we have, right? Visual languages are not easy to get snippets or to copy paste stuff or to get. So effectively, it tends to be, we had to create our own GitHub with Forge, for example, because you cannot easily put an OutSystems project inside a GitHub, right? It takes a little bit of jingling. So we ended up having to create the community tools for the community to be able to collaborate and to help themselves, to help each other in this process. So effectively, you know, if you come to the OutSystems community, some people say, oh, it's like a cult because they're all in that website. They don't go anywhere else. But the truth is that it's hard. It's literally logistically hard to manage OutSystems code somewhere else. Now with integrations and components, we're doing more of that. But everybody's there. Everybody works with the tools, and it's a really, really active and thriving community.
Yeah. And I think basically what OutSystems takes the role of, and I think this is a little bit what Miguel Baltazar was saying, is OutSystems acts more as a steward for the intrinsic motivation that the individuals that use the platform already carry, especially in the earlier days. I mean, the community rose up because people were just excited about the possibilities, and there was this somewhat restricted number of people. So you had the feeling that you were part of something that was quite unique. And in very early on, and a lot of the participators at way back then included, for example, a lot of Dutch people for historical reasons, because, well, first of all, after Portugal, the Netherlands became a very, very big, important hub for OutSystems, and because culturally, the Dutch are quite driven at sharing. So the community managers will tell you that way back then, even though we actually had more Portuguese developers in just sheer numbers than we have Dutch, we did see a lot of participation of the Dutch, and we needed somehow to host all of those snippets and good stuff in some way that, as Baltazar said, couldn't just be put up in GitHub. So really, I guess the digital team that supports the properties of community in OutSystems is like, okay, there's so much good stuff that actually is emerging from the community, from people who are super keen on putting something back. How do we handle the discoverability of these things? How do we facilitate that someone maybe in India joins a group that was started by someone in Singapore, that also includes someone in the US, and between them they can join together into features, and that's just a digital place. But another thing that the community at large, the organizational community, does is really create moments where you can still capture this one-on-one of the individuals, to try to also keep the fire of belonging to something going. Because the word kind of cult was used. It's not, obviously no one wants to have a cult, but you do want people who are inflamed for
cults.
Cultish. So because those people sometimes are the people who think and come up with sideways ways of doing things that maybe work around some current limitation on a technology, and they get the R&D thinking, oh, this guy came up with a really good idea, maybe we could bake into this. So there's a lot, when you zoom into community and the participation of individuals, especially very intelligent individuals, it's super exciting to be in the vortex of these discussions.
Yeah, let me grab on this comparison with Stack Overflow, because we are talking about, in that case, a platform that technologies that are all known by computer science people. Here we are talking about OutSystems, which is a technology that back then was not known by many people, and still today we find some people with computer science background that don't know OutSystems. And I see sometimes with some friends of mine that there is still some resistance from computer science engineers. Low code, is that real for me? Is that real the thing for me? I'm going to get away from those geeky tools and that low code, that high code level. Do you continue to see these resistance, and how has these resistance has evolved during all these years?
I think I'll jump on this one. I think we'll continue to see it because I think maybe all of us are software engineers, so we're part of the problem, or at some point we're part of the problem. Maybe Baltazar has distanced himself a little bit more, but I certainly cannot have the plausibility to do so. There is a degree of bravado when you're a very, to use an expression that people used to use at OutSystems, a deep engineer. There's a certain bravado, there's a certain amount of like Rambo thing that you think like, okay, if I'm going to do what I do in a technology that's accessible to people with, not quite as many chops as I have, then I'm selling myself short. So there's a weird self-preservation attitude on people who are a little bit less pragmatic, that makes them sort of be standoffish about technologies that sound like they simplify things. But having said that, you still see it, but I observe that it is eroding, because I think people are beginning to realize that you can be a very valued professional, that your chops and your intelligence, when applied in a low-code platform, or a platform that's more focused on outcomes than open brackets, close brackets, that those multipliers will still apply, but you do need to go over that hump, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, I agree, Miguel, when you say that it is eroding. We have seen, so to answer directly your question, Sarah, we are seeing less and less resistance of people coming into OutSystems. And that is for two main reasons, at least in my opinion. The first one is that low-code is really becoming a standard, and it's growing like crazy. In Gartner, I don't know if you saw, but this year we actually were named leaders again in the Gartner quadrant. And for example, one of the big criteria that Gartner gives to us in terms of fully leadership and being the ones best able to execute is actually the fact that we have a forge with over 4,000 components, right? And you look at any other low-code tools, they have hundreds. We have more than 4,000 in there ready to be used, and a really thriving community that, like Miguel described. So people, I think a lot of the deep engineers, as Miguel say, are starting to look at low-code as, oh, this is just a silly thing to make simple applications, and are starting to think that low-code is now one extra skill they need to have, right? They need to learn how to write SQL. They need to know how to write JavaScript. They need to know how to do Flutter, right? And they need to know how to do low-code, because there are certain pieces of applications that make a lot of sense to be done in low-code, and there's others that do not, right? So there's certain use cases where a good developer, someone that is trying to actually solve the problem and not just code for the sake of coding, that will be able to use low-code as one of the many tools in their tool set to create the application that they need, right? We know, for example, that OutSystems just acquired Ionic, because one of the reasons we see is that there's a big capability of still doing front ends in Ionic and doing the back ends in OutSystems and being able to integrate both of them. So more and more, this is not something that you lose everything else and you start programming in low code and that's your life, right? This is another skill in your skill set, right? And so I would urge anybody that is hearing us that does not know a lot about low code to go try it out, because this is something useful. If you want to be an architect in the future, if you want to be a team lead, if you want to be a CIO or a CTO, you need to know what are the right use cases for low code and what are not the right use cases for low code and when to use it. So a lot of what we see, besides, of course, people that are coming in to learn how to program, to have a simpler capability, are the expert deep developers coming in to understand when to use it, how to use it. And a lot of them say, hey, this makes complete sense. Why am I going to lose 5 weeks doing this if I can do it in 2 or 3 days? Because it's an exact use case that I could use in low code. Or why am I going to do this piece of my project with the integration with the backend, then the exposure of the service somewhere else that I can do in low code? And then I can really focus in doing my pixel perfect front end or my mobile application in the technologies that make sense for that. So more and more, we see that resistance eroding for these two reasons, I would say.
When will we see OutSystems in the universities? Because this conversation was kind of, really, really hitting in my head, because I was like, sure, when I was at school, we learned a little bit about Microsoft, maybe a little bit of open source. Like everything that we are saying, I think is super relevant. And I think that obviously this adoption, this resistance to, I don't know if I like this. Definitely, it's a lot about, lack of education, lack of really understanding, what's it about, what's in it for someone to start learning it. Do we think that, or are we hoping that one day universities really adopt this and also show this to students? Or is this something that is already happening? Is this
Miguel, I'll go first, and then I'll let you say.
Which
is, I think, very relevant.
I want to go at this one.
Go. Absolutely. No, I mean, universities have always been something that is very talked about. I tell you, I started this job in May, and by June, I had already had 20 calls with 20 people inside of OutSystems that say, hey, why aren't we doing this in universities, right? Or at least pushing this very hard in universities. Yep. I think the important thing to say here is that we are pushing it hard in universities. There's a lot of universities around the world that are now using OutSystems as ways of teaching specific capabilities. Like I think, Miguel, it's the one you work with, that is teaching business process management using OutSystems as a way of teaching this. We also have universities that are just teaching it as a way of teaching students how to program and how to do applications. The issue with universities is, and I'll be very blunt here with all of you, is that we need to scale. In order to do it properly, we need to be able to scale. And we at OutSystems do not have the resources to go and talk to 700 universities all across the world. So what we're actually doing and we're releasing is what we call an educator kit. So it's a piece of documentation and training that allows teachers to use our free edition, which is, we call it a personal edition, to train their students. It has exams, it has syllabus, it has content. So it has a lot of things that it has a back office where they can see how their students are progressing through the courses and all of that. So all of this thing is being released. We've been having it and creating it and testing it on the ground. So the objective here is then to have our partners, our customers, our employees go to whatever universities they want and say, hey, here's something I would like to see because I'm an alumni of Chicago University or Stanford or whatever, right? And then just scale it that way. It's very hard. We started an education program a few years ago, but it always hit that bottleneck, which is how many people do we need to run 700, 1,000 universities, which is what we need to do. So we're rethinking it, getting a new tool and trying to move from there. Miguel, go ahead.
It is well, it's a subject certainly quite close to my heart. And just yesterday, I emailed 2 universities here in the Netherlands, trying to do a little bit my bit. Obviously, Product League is not involved formally with universities or training, but myself and a few other people have a heart for the next generation, because let's be honest, we're not getting any younger, and the next people need to be in place to continue the work we're doing. It is, however, I think, and Baltazar mentioned a little bit the several flavors by which OutSystems is mentioned in universities. The one university where I do yearly a couple of kind of master classes, they indeed went for the OutSystems as an add-on to a grander subject, which is business process modeling. Now, I think their heart is in the right place, but for example, in that particular case, I think the time for OutSystems is a little bit squashed within what that particular subject can have in terms of hours per week. So I posit that people maybe get out of this particular course with some cursory knowledge of OutSystems, and maybe actually with a certain degree of tiredness of like, oh gosh, I had to cram this language to do something else because the subject is called something else. And I think the big challenge that we have as a community, and that OutSystems in particular, the community group needs to have, is how can we have more of the universities where low code is a first-class citizen? And it is indeed explained as as something that you should aspire and not as an add-on to another concept. And obviously, once you actually go over all the prejudice of the bravado that we talked a little bit, actually they're the best languages for you to teach the essentials of the thought process of engineering software. So for me, it's a no-brainer that that people should use low code as the sweet spot of being able to teach ideas like scopes and data and database without the person needing to boil the ocean and learn Java and compilers and to get it going. So I think basically the framework is there and the technology is very adept at it. I think we just haven't done justice in terms of wooing the universities. And it might be something that now, as Miguel was saying, as low code gets more and more visibility, that the lecturers and the people who create the curriculum, they will come around and sort of say, you know what, maybe we should teach this as well. Maybe teach Java, Python, and the low code platform. And hopefully in our case, we hope it's OutSystems. But even if it's not OutSystems, I think it will add to the body of knowledge, and it will erode any prejudice that this is I don't know, a corner option or a secondary option. And I think we all stand to gain from this awakening.
For sure.
Since OutSystems simplifies so much the complexity of the development, I wonder, do we have people in the community that don't have any computer science background, and at some point in their lives they had a big career shift on the moment that they discovered low code? Is low code for more people than just the computer science ones? I don't know.
Well, maybe I'll tackle that, and then I'll let Miguel add a little bit of color, because I'm sure he knows a lot of people like that. Well, it's very interesting because we see three big types of developers being drawn towards OutSystems. The first one we already mentioned is the experienced developers that are looking for low code as a way to expand their knowledge, to be more productive, and to resolve their problems faster. The second one is, of course, we already talked about universities, but recently graduated computer science people also tend to gravitate, because it's an open career, it's faster, you get promoted faster. We have data that shows that that effectively people get to tech lead and senior developer in less than 5 years, which in traditional code is completely unheard of. And then they go on to be, actually architects, much faster. But most importantly, I think, and it's very important that we understand this, computer science people actually are able to use low code to a lot fuller extent, because they understand what's behind it, and they're able to tackle more complex use cases. But the truth is, for the everyday application that is needed inside of organizations, low code is able to cater with very different levels of simplicity, but actually in a very simple way. So we've seen a lot of reskilling programs, both for people that are outside of computer science, but also, for minorities, underserved minorities, and other people that need a help and a leg up, that allows them to start with programming and actually be highly active and then highly skilled programming using low code. And effectively, we're working with organizations around the world that are doing that and that are being extremely successful. I know one of the members that is currently in R&D that started in the demo team while I was running the demo team. And she was an environmental engineer, and she basically just came in, and all of a sudden she became one of our best developers, and she moved on to be inside of OutSystems R&D. But there's a lot of stories. I don't know if you saw last year's keynote that we did in Next Step, the Day 3 keynote. We have a large amount of testimonials from people in that video that just started and are getting their lives changed and evolving. And it's not just being able to do something that you're good at and that gets you the money for you to survive, but also being able to be with your family more, to have a better work-life balance, to be able to even volunteer your skills in order to help other people. We've been having a lot of cases inside of our community of people that have changed their lives because now with low code they're able to actually be computer programmers and developers, and that is awesome.
Yeah, I would say that obviously software engineering background gives you, it kind of bootstraps you being able to get to some of the things that you will eventually get to. But I would say if someone from other walks of life, if they have the mindset, if they have a structured way of tackling things in their lives, if they're generally very systematic in whatever it is that they do, and this could be you might be a psychologist or you might be something else. Certainly those people that come maybe not from software engineering, but the greater group of STEM, so sciences, technology, engineering, and mathematics, those people, the thought process is there, And if they have the discipline and the willingness to step in, they can become very capable and very good developers. And tying together with something that I said earlier on is the fact that a lot of the times you think and you apply your time thinking a little bit higher level actually puts you more in contact with what is it that I'm actually trying to fix. I'm not trying to do a sort algorithm. Well, most of the time, you're not trying to do a sort algorithm that's as fast as possible. You're trying to achieve something. And this already puts you a little bit on the spectrum of maybe you could actually be more of an analyst kind of person. Yes, with the technical chops for implementing, but with a little bit more of a client-facing skills, et cetera, et cetera. And this is something that, people sometimes do not understand. As the years go by, your interest can change. And if you're locked into a technology where really the only thing that you ever done was super high charged, software engineering, and then you decide that maybe your focus isn't there, you're old and tired or wiser or whatever, you need to move completely away. Actually, within the framework, the worldview of low code, certainly espoused in the product league, because we actually have people who address the other roles that are not just development, like analysts and product owners, et cetera, et cetera. I've seen people who sort of say, I really am enjoying this part of just figuring out what we're trying to achieve. And these people can easily remain in the same ecosystem, remain in the same clients, remain in the same projects, and start moving towards these other roles because it is more blended. And I think this is a very compelling proposition that's easier, for example, when we talk with business IT students than the pure software engineer computer science, because the business IT students, they like technology, they'd rather stay with technology, but they tend to have a more open mind towards other areas. And I actually think this might be even the sweetest spot if we want to address universities, rather than the pure geeks, the people who are a little bit more on the fence of how they see technology.
Yeah, Miguel can say geek because he's a geek himself.
Yeah. So talking about my tribe, so I'm good.
I really enjoy the point of view of low code helping also on the diversity of the tech community. That's super interesting. Very quickly, because I know that we will need to end the show pretty soon. We spoke already about Next Step. We know it's pretty much the flagship event of this super interesting community. I know obviously that I imagine that COVID had an impact on the dynamic, on the way that the community lived. Any news for this year of 2023?
Yes, actually, I mean, starting with the end of your question, COVID did have a significant impact in our community. Initially, the impacts were actually surprisingly more positive because we were able to, we had to move, of course, all our events to be virtual. Interestingly enough, we've had experiences where the fact that our events became virtual brought a lot more people to those events and actually brought a lot more diversity to those events. I'll give you a quick example as a story. We started having, we used to do developer schools, and in the developer schools, people would come to our office to learn for 2 weeks after hours to learn how to code OutSystems. And when we had to move them to be virtual, we started getting, for example, a lot more women than we used to have before, because for women, mainly as family providers and family makers, it was hard to come to the OutSystems office after hours, right? Because they need to be home, and all of the sudden we were able to provide this opportunity to a lot of other people that were not included in our first version. And as we moved virtually, it really helped. It also allowed, interestingly enough, the fact that a lot of companies had to move to digital channels. They had to speed up their digital transformation. It also allowed a lot of opportunities, not just to do good, but to sell our product too, of course. And most importantly, to resolve serious issues. We had a COVID-19 community response initiative that really allowed our community members to build applications that were very important and vital in terms of monitoring hospital beds and doing other very important things. What we've seen, though, is that as things move to virtual and 2 years, almost 3 years have gone by, effectively, the community has eroded a little bit. That spirit of especially the new people coming in, they never saw any other OutSystems developer in the flesh, right? And we know that this is really hard. That's why we're really excited with this new approach that we're taking to bringing back in-person conferences. So next step is going to become more of a business-focused event, and we are creating actual developer conferences that are going to be in Europe, in the Americas, in Asia Pacific. So we're going to do regional conferences to really bring back that in-person feeling, to really allow people to see each other, to have a beer, to teach, to laugh, to have fun, to learn, to evolve. These are all things that the pandemic took away from us, and that we really want to bring back this year. And this is very exciting. It's actually hard because, the way the market is, the way things are kind of a little bit in a downturn, getting budget to go back and doing events like this was a big fight from the developer relations team here at OutSystems. But we were able to, and Paulo was very keen once we explained what we wanted to do, to go and help us find the way to do it. And this is very exciting. If you allow me to tell you about a couple of other things that we're doing, I think this would be very, very cool. Another thing that we're talking, and I talked already about the Digital Volunteers Initiative, but as we know, we're launching ODC, the OutSystems Developer Cloud, the new way of coding OutSystems, and this is going to be very important. So we're joining these two together, and we're actually giving out ODC license to nonprofits and getting our community members to be able to donate to these nonprofits their skills and their coding capabilities, and also at the same time try ODC, right? Because a lot of these people are not going to be coding ODC for a little while. So if you're interested in learning how to code ODC and to have a little bit practice with it, this would be great if you want to do that and at the same time help your local nonprofits. This is going to be a great initiative. We were very, very gung-ho about this one. But most importantly, I think what we want to make sure is we want to localize, we want to focus on local communities, we want to foster the ecosystems, the user groups, the people that are doing this all over the world, and really make sure that this in-person feeling that comes back to our community.
Yeah. So we are reaching the end of our conversation. We already talked about so many things, and I will keep asking more questions.
Definitely, you could keep going.
You can keep going.
Yeah, exactly. But we still have two final questions in a more fun tone. I will start with the first one that might sound a bit cliche, but I'm curious about your answers, which is, what's your favorite code?
Who should go first, Baltazar or Melo?
Let's let Miguel go. Melo
okay, go I'll go first. Okay, well, I have many favorite quotes, but one of my favorite quotes is, when you're up to your neck in alligators, it's hard to remember that you were here to drain the swamp. What does this mean? Basically, when you actually come into stuff with the greatest strategic intention of doing something, and then the fires start going and you start putting out the fires, it's the alligators, they're coming to chop at you. You just wanted to drain the swamp. And, when you're in the thick of it, you lose track of what it is that you were actually meaning to do. And I think this is applicable in many walks of life, but it certainly is applicable a lot of when we're developing software. Another associated sentence that people say is yak shaving, which is like, well, I need to fix this, but before I need to go over here and I need to fix this, and crap, this isn't doing, let me check, the data is blowing up. And at the end of the day, you go like, you got the Stack Overflow, and now you need to pop. What was it that I was actually trying to do? And I think the other sentence of the alligators up to your neck, I think you can just visualize the poor guy who wanted to drain the swamp.
Absolutely. That's very true. I think I'm going to be a little bit cliche with mine, but it's something that I firmly believe, and I try to apply in everything that I do. It's a quote from Leonardo da Vinci that says that simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. And for me, it's a lot harder to do something simple than it is to do something complex. And as a computer science engineer from training, it's very easy to make a really complex program, piece of code that takes care of all these things. It's really easy to iterate and overstate, and then all of a sudden there's a jumble of things you don't understand. But this applies also to communication, to trying to solve business problems, to all of that. It's very important that we invest time in going for simplicity. It's very important that we invest time, as Elon Musk say, and I know he's not very popular, but to go for the first principle, right? To understand what is the reason that we're doing this? What is the ultimate thing in there? And the truth is that if you do it, you'll potentially figure out that the thing you're doing doesn't make sense anymore, because you went down there to that first principle, and that first principle is no longer true or can be solved in a different way. So the ability to simplify everything that you do, to make it understandable and easy to pass on and communicate to people, to make sure that your code is simple. If you have a simple use case, don't go overdo it in a piece of high code. Get something like OutSystems and do it in a simple way and fast, so that you can move on and to the next challenge that is hard, that you're really going to need to struggle with, right? And I think, in that way, this notion of simplicity is something that we should keep alive in our lives.
Fantastic. Completely agree.
Here.
So now, just to finish, Baltazar, a question for Melo, and then we'll ask Melo to ask a question to Baltazar. So, anything goes.
Okay.
Baltazar, you can ask
anything. Okay, I've known Miguel for some time, and I've always wanted to ask him this question, but I never have the guts to ask him. So I'm going to.
Now you do it live.
Exactly. So Miguel, what is your favorite Monty Python skit?
What is my favorite Monty Python skit? Oh gosh,
you see,
I don't know. Okay, yeah, because now I'm running hours and hours of Monty Python through my head for those people who know me. I would. There's a very obvious one that's easy to find, which is the Frenchman in the Holy Grail that's up in the castle, and for some reason there's a castle full of French people in the UK. That's quite fun. It is a great opportunity to learn how to swear at someone in a very surreal and actually not using bad words. So go check it out. The Frenchman taunting in the Holy Grail. But if you ask me, just standalone skit, it's actually a very little known one, because it was not in the canon of the Monty Python Flying Circus. It was just in a specials that they did for the Austrian television. Now you can see I'm going down the rabbit hole, right? But look it up.
You need to put all the links for these things.
It is about a shop that sells both hearing aids and contact lenses. And I will say no more. The first time I saw it, the tears were coming down my face. I had a bellyache. I watched it again afterwards, and it still elicited the same result. You have to see
We're definitely all going to
I need to look for it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hearing aids and contact lenses. It's so awesome. It's so awesome.
Very cool.
So, Baltazar, mine is a more simpler one. Obviously, we know each other for a while, and you've been in many responsibilities in OutSystems, more even than myself. And what is the one that what your responsibility at OutSystems that you felt was the biggest? When you write your memoirs, what's the biggest chapter of their memoirs within OutSystems?
Which is in terms of longest or more important? What do you think?
Yeah, more important. What was the one where you felt like, okay, over here I grew or I pushed the needle more than on other ones?
Yeah, well, I mean, you gave two answers, so I'm allowed to give two answers too. I think the one you're at right now is always the one that is making you grow the most. So I will tell you that I think what I'm doing now is definitely the furthest out of my comfort zone that I've ever been inside of OutSystems because of my training and because of what I'm doing. But effectively, I have a great team, and it's been an amazing ride. And I tell you, 2023, after everything that we prepared in 2022 for it, is really going to be the year of developer, and it's going to be great for all of us. But I think the team and the extended team with the MVPs, the champions, the community itself are really gonna thrive. So I'm really excited about that. But I cannot write in my memoirs yet because it's not done. So let me tell you another one. I think I would say it's almost a year and a half that I spent in Project X. And I don't know if any of you know what Project X is or was in this case. It does not exist as Project X anymore. But there was a moment in the history of OutSystems in which we started growing so much that there was a significant amount of problems that were falling through the cracks, meaning we had too many departments, and the problem spanned too many departments that no department had more than 50% ownership of the problem, right? Mm-hmm. So if this department has 20%, that one has 30, the other one has 25, the other one is 15, then all of a sudden, no one's responsible for the problem. And Project X was an attempt from Paulo to say, I need someone that is responsible for these problems that are nobody's responsibility, right? And so there was no name for this department. We never had seen anything like this, so we called it Project X. And Gaiolas led it with Ricardo Araújo and Tavares and Jen and myself, Francisco, Rui Barbosa, a bunch of historical people at OutSystems kind of decided to stop what they're doing and go in there. And it was probably the biggest growth that I've ever had because it forced me to start thinking strategically about a significant amount of problems, but again, have no power to resolve them whatsoever, right? So my job was to think, here's a problem. Here are the main drivers of this problem. Now I need to go and get each one of the departments to actually do something about it. So I was responsible for one of our big problems. We already mentioned it, which is the fact that when OutSystems lands and we sell it and the customer buys it, it effectively does nothing, right? And so what we said is, okay, so we should end our sale not when we sell the platform, but when the first application goes live and is providing value. And we call that first value. So the problem I was trying to resolve is how can we minimize the time it takes from the moment you buy the platform to the moment that your first application is live. And that is a really hard problem to tackle, but it involves everybody, almost everybody at OutSystems. So it was really cool. We started measuring things, we started being data-driven, looking at numbers, looking at reason, and it really changed my own way of looking at problems. And then it was, I would say, that was my most growing experience inside of OutSystems.
Fantastic.
Great question.
Great question. So this is it. Definitely, it was. I think I can confess now. It's definitely one of my favorite shows. I think Miguel, Melo, Miguel, Baltazar. It was awesome to be in this conversation. It took around like almost 1 hour. I think that it's easy to say that we could definitely go for two. So many things that are still to talk about. But unfortunately, for the sake of time, we can't. Otherwise, I think it would be super easy for us to definitely invest more time in this. So thank you for your presence. For everyone that's watching us on the internet, thank you for staying there. And this is pretty much another episode of Hey CTO with the awesome OutSystems dev community. And thank you again, Miguel Melo and Miguel Baltazar, for the inspiration and the super interesting insights that both of you provided. So I think that's it for me and Sara. So thank you everyone, and see you next time. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sara. Thank you, Miguel. Bye.